Welcome to our very first We're Not Your Typical podcast social gathering. We are beyond excited that this day has finally arrived and we get to spend it with all of you. We are so overwhelmed with the turnout. We generally thought we would have about 10 people coming, so thank you so much. And this event is your chance to connect, find your community, and experience a sense of being heard, seen, and valued.
Lovely. Take a moment to look around the room. At least 90% of people here have a child, a grandchild, niece or nephew with special needs. Why is this important? Because it's a reminder that you're not alone. We're all in this together, supporting and uplifting one another.
Even for Jade and I, our journey has come full circle. We grew up together on a road with only 11 houses. Years later, life has brought us back together. Proving that some connections are simply meant to be. So first up, we have our men. The wonderful dads to our wonderful children and our amazing husbands, Nick and Josh. We've got some questions to ask you. The boys don't even know.
Can't wait.
Can't wait, but I think both of you like to wing things more than plan something, so we'll go from there.
Before we start, can I just say how incredibly proud I am of both of you?
Got there first. Bastard.
Sorry, mate. I'll start, you can finish. You started on this journey not that many months ago, and to see how you've built this community so quickly and the energy you put into this and the passion behind it. Jade, I never thought 2 years ago that you'd be doing anything like this when we found out about Bailey. So just want to say thank you, everyone. I'm really proud of both of you.
Thanks, Nick.
I've got a second.
Follow that.
I've got a second that. Fuck's sake. Yeah, look, what you girls have created and what you stand for is truly so important. I am unbelievably proud of you, and I think that everyone in this room can appreciate and understand that this is just more than important and just a huge well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it
We're
goes without
done,
saying.
thanks.
Yeah, done. Thank you, everyone. So
We've
thought...
just got a few little questions
Yeah.
because we didn't want to wing it too much. So we're going to start with the first question. Do you ever struggle with the challenges life has presented, or do you believe your child was meant to be the way she is for a reason? Take it away, Nick.
I think, look, we definitely struggle with the challenges. It's turned our life upside down to an extent. I think what we've tried to do is keep life as normal as we possibly can, still do the things that we want to do. We still have 2 other children who need us, but whilst also providing Bailey what she needs. I think the hardest thing is actually remembering what we need sometimes and finding the time for you to do things you want to do. The things that I want to do is probably what we fight about the most.
Sleep.
Yeah, that being the number one. I'm not sure that's just about having typical or non-typical children. I think we all fight about sleep, but do I think it was meant to be? I mean, that's $1 million question. I really don't. I actually don't know, but the most important thing for us to do is accept it as quickly as possible, that it was part of our life, is part of our life, and will continue to be part of our life. And what's the best that we can do for Bailey, for Brody, for Blake, and for us to make sure that we're all supported, and we do have amazing family support around us. We're very, very lucky. I know not everyone has that, and it does give us a break once in a while, because that's also important. Sometimes it's just finding those moments to breathe, because it does feel chaotic. It is full on, with work, with the kids, with everything else that comes along with that, with the unknown that comes with finding out more and more about the development of your child who has got some special needs, something I didn't think would ever happen to us. I'm sure anyone who's got a special needs child potentially feels the same. I can't speak for everyone, but that's been my experience of speaking to people. But we are where we are. Yeah. And there's no point. I think I said this in our podcast. I don't really try and look at why. I just don't think I'll ever get that answer. So I've always just said, it is. We have to deal with what we can do. Can we get acceptance and out of denial as quickly as possible so that Bailey has the best chance of her life, the best chance to live the most normal life she can live, whilst also making sure that our needs and the other kids' needs are met.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Josh, would you like to answer that, or should we go to the next question?
What was the question again?
On that note, we'll go to the next one, shall we? So your question, Josh, is how do you balance your personal needs with the needs of your family?
So it's difficult. I basically find that I have to find that small window where I can have some me time, where that's going to the gym, or
sitting in the car on the drive before you go out.
That podcast isn't out yet.
On the drive, normally on a phone call, but I will sometimes pretend I'm still on the phone, where I'm just taking deep breaths, knowing what I'm in for as I walk through the front door. Look, going for a walk, going for a run, going to the gym, taking some me time is super important. And I think for most people, let alone man, woman, whatever, you need to have that time where...
I also think we need our time
100%.
as well.
100%.
And that's what Mum always said, is that, and my mother-in-law, that they'll have the children maybe once every 6 weeks. And this is my advice to you guys too, if you don't already do it, to have an evening away from the children, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do so, to have that time together as well. Because even though the me time is great, we are the unit together that raise our children. So
completely agree, yeah. Which we've definitely...
That felt like a lecture.
Yeah. Most of
where are you booking? Because I need a night away.
You just got the look.
Yeah.
I don't even need to say anything.
We've actually definitely applied that more.
Yeah, you've been away
recently.
a few times.
Yeah. Which is super important because your relationship, look, the foundation came from you two, right? So kids came after. Sometimes forgetting that, yes, your kids are the most important thing in the world, but so is your relationship, so is your spouse, lover, partner, whatever. They are the people that you created these amazing kids with, and if you don't spend that time together, strengthening the foundation, strengthening what you've built on top of those foundations, it will all crumble. Going back to the question, in terms of like how I separate and look after my own needs, it's like, I think my need is that I need my family to be supported.
He just needs us. He went skiing last week.
Yeah, and I missed you guys. Like after
every day, I want to come
12
back.
hours, I was like,
I miss them.
because even though when you're, do you know what it is? Like when you're like at home and you're like sitting here going, I need a break, right? But like
reality
is that like that is my norm and that is my home and
it's your comfort.
It's my comfort.
Yeah, I don't think we feel that way, do we?
I said I'll go on the ski trip, but
I'd like to come at this from a different angle.
please do. Fire away, Nick.
This is my greatest battle, if I'm honest with you. My greatest battle is I get frustrated because I still want to do some of the things that I want to do. I struggle with lack of time for myself. And, I suppose maybe the slightly selfish part of me wants to do selfish things at times. But then you get the pull of, well, actually, I had kids and that was my decision and they've got needs and Jade's got needs. And, I kind of know I'm at the bottom of the barrel, shall we say, at times.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. But I think it's just an ongoing battle. I don't think it will ever not be there because I want to go and watch Brody's football. I want to play golf. I want to do things. And I think my biggest battle is going to be the fact that I know Bailey is going to need so much she's not going through phases like the other two. Yeah. It's almost like she's stuck in the phase of being needy 24/7. And that is probably my greatest ongoing battle.
Okay. And actually saying that, when I came to your house a few days ago to fill these lovely gift bags for you all, I came in and I was like, because Jade, as you know, has Brody and Blake, who are older, and just walking into the house and thinking, You're not having to parent your children. I'm walking in, I'm like, this is so
Bailey, yes.
chilled. Bailey was in bed. She didn't fall asleep for ages, but she was happy in there. Nick finally got back from football. He was lying in the lounge watching his TV, and then 2 fishwives called him.
We need your help.
Come in. He was like, I bet Josh wouldn't do this. Anyway, not that I have diagnosed you with ADHD, but you very much say that you are undiagnosed. The undiagnosed ADHD in you filled those bags in 10 minutes. So give me a high five for that. Oh, fist pump. There we go.
All right.
I
So,
just wanted it done so I could chill.
so what have you learned from Bailey that's changed you in ways that you look at, that you view the world?
First thing that comes to mind is I give a shit less what people think. I used to care a lot, and sometimes still do, but it's maybe just not care as much because I just can't. There's too many occasions where she might have a meltdown or people might look at her differently or things, and that's not being like an arrogant, I don't give a what you think. That is, I just can't care because she's going to be different and there's going to be things that she does that are different to other kids. I'd like to say it's taught me patience, but I struggle with patience. But it has done a bit because when when the other two would throw a tantrum, I could tell them
Yeah, you can read it.
there are consequences to this. There is no reasoning with Bailey. She doesn't understand
Yet.
I can only speak current. She doesn't understand. She can't communicate her frustrations. It's a bit of a guessing game, and I think it's just taught me to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more tolerant, and maybe a bit more understanding of situations that I used to get maybe frustrated about.
Fair.
Yeah.
Can I that just reminded me of something that happened to me today. I took Marley to the hospital, and there was a corridor probably from here to the end of the room. And we got called by the nurse to get his height and weight checked. And I said, Marley, we've got to go. And he was on the phone, on my phone, and he didn't want to get off the phone. So the rage that came from his throat was so embarrassing. I was walking all the way down, and I just said, this is like the walk of shame, and the whole of the hospital burst out laughing, because we've all been there. Even if your children are typical or neurotypical, they all have meltdowns, they all get angry, and we're all in it together. So I just had to tell you that bit there.
I still can't cope with the aeroplane though.
What?
I struggle on the aeroplane with it. That's the bit I really struggle
She's
with.
brilliant on the aeroplane. I
They
have
struggle
with the
with
whole
aeroplane
aeroplane.
with me. So
Yeah, Josh has got a
It's the
lovely
opposite.
fear of flying, so I sit with both children on my own, and he sits there praying for life.
more Xanax.
Life.
And
He took a Xanax, no judgment, to a flight to Spain. He was conked out for
was
the
a
whole
great
2
flight.
hours, as well as the whole taxi journey, which was an hour and a half, and I had to deal with both children on my own.
That is the greatest blag I've ever heard anyone say in my life.
smoothest flight ever.
Mate,
Great.
respect.
Thank you, mate.
So we've got one last question. What has been the most rewarding part of your journey as a father to a neurodivergent child?
Josh.
Children.
Sleep. Really? When I
Genuinely,
get some,
yeah.
that's my biggest reward.
No, but come on.
Seeing the progress. I mean, Callie has really come on leaps and bounds in the past year,
School,
18
really.
months. School has been the biggest contributing factor to that. They are unbelievable with her. The parents, the teachers,
Thank you to all the parents that are here today from
Yeah.
school supporting us. Woo, woo, woo.
big up. Teachers, parents, the community feel, honestly, like just everything. I mean, recently they did a crowd raise, which was for a new Send room. It just shows you how highly held the special education needs side of it all is. They are absolutely brilliant with her. They don't find her in any way a nuisance. If anything, they
They just praise her all the
cherish
time.
her. She's like the most purest soul in the world.
Yeah.
She really is. There's not
Till she
a
cuts
bad
her hair
bone.
and she's got no fringe left, but that's fine.
Which comes from the anxiety and the struggles that she deals with day to day. It's not like, she's doing it to make us upset. She doesn't understand that it does make us upset. She thinks that this is her way of This is her way of dealing with what's going on in her head, which we can't understand. We try to. The biggest, the biggest thing is seeing the progress that she's made. Honestly, I couldn't love something more.
I know.
I couldn't.
I know.
I'm proud of her. I wouldn't change her for the world. I know there are people there that have these things. I'm not typical.
I wouldn't change her, but I would change the world that she lives in.
100%. To make them more accepting. She is everything that I could want in a child. Genuinely. I mean
Gorgeous.
that. Hand on my heart, absolutely everything to me. And I
Beautiful.
just pray to God that she gets what I hope for her.
That's
And
beautiful,
I
Josh.
genuinely mean that from the bottom of my heart. I just want her to,
Thank you, boys. You are currently off the stage.
Thank God for
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
So we now have Louise and Rebecca from Autism Unraveled. Welcome to the stage, ladies. So we thought we'll just hand it over to you. Please introduce yourselves. Let the lovely audience know what you do and how you help our children.
Hi everybody, I'm Louise
Hi, I'm Rebecca.
and we are from Neurodiversity Unraveled. We've actually rebranded, so that was a little while ago. I'm a speech and language therapist and
I'm a clinical psychologist, and Louise and I met 10
long
years
time-
ago, longer, working in a school in East London, which specialises in working with autistic pupils.
yeah, and we were part of a multidisciplinary team and it was a great school and we loved working there and it was a fantastic team. Unfortunately, the sort of caseloads grew and I personally started my own family and decided I wanted to do something where I could actually do something that felt like I was doing something meaningful and I could help people in a way that felt a bit more authentic to what I wanted to do, and at the same time you had children as well. So we kind of over breastfeeding, that sort of thing, we kind of cooked up this idea that actually we could do something that we could create what we wanted to do together. So that's what we did.
Yep.
And
I was working in CAMS, so my background is working in mental health, and I was in the neurodevelopmental team and was in the MDT in the school as well. And I think we both just felt that we weren't able to offer a service which we wanted to do to be able to support people throughout a lifespan. And I don't know about everybody's experiences, but we know that from our sort of clinical experiences, you'd work with families and then you'd have to say goodbye, or you'd have to say, sorry, I can't work with you because you don't fit the criteria. And it was quite painful and quite difficult and didn't feel like it was what we were trained to do. So
yeah, especially when you're doing a diagnosis with a family and then you literally have to close the door on them on the day. There's nothing worse for both sides.
Well, that's
So you
literally-
give the diagnosis and then you say thanks, bye.
Like you've reached the end of the journey with our service, and like it's not
That's
something
exactly how it was
you feel
when
good
we got
about.
Bailey's
Yeah.
diagnosis. They said, are we going to
No,
close down
they
now?
give you a
Like,
leaflet.
Yeah,
It was like, get on with it. She's got
and it doesn't
autism.
feel good to you as a professional or to doing that to a family. It's really horrible. And each time I did it, I kept saying to my manager, like, this isn't right. This isn't what people are just making sense of it. It's the beginning. It's the day one for them. And, you know, it's a lifelong journey of sort of making sense of. And so that's where we sort of came up with this idea. So Neurodiversity Unraveled was sort of born out of this idea that needs change over time, and we have this open door policy. People can get in touch as and when they need. It doesn't have to be, oh, the door is closed. The door is open. If there's challenges that you need support with or you just want to talk it through, we have parent consultations and we have different ways of working with people. So yeah, that was about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what we started, and it's great to be here. I got
Yeah.
quite moved by your husband, and you know, I was like, oh, I'm going to cry. It's been an
Yeah.
it's been an emotional
It's been a long day for us.
We've been in clinic all day, and you know, I think just coming here and being sort of sandwiched between Neurodiversity Celebration Week and Mother's Day feels amazing to be in this room with people and sort of be able to meet you all.
Yeah.
We
Brilliant.
just love working with the families we get to work with. We try to build strong connections and support people in different ways. And yeah, neurodiversity for us just is quite personal for me. I'm neurodivergent, I've got ADHD and dyslexia, and we kind of feel that makes our team even stronger, because I come at things quite differently to Rebecca, who's neurotypical, and you know, that's the richness of us as a couple. We call each other working wives, because we probably spend more time than with our own partners, to be honest.
So we really wanted to base this podcast on ADHD. So we had a few questions that we'd put to each other, and one of them was, what were the markers for ADHD of parents that have concerns and thinking about having an assessment for their child?
Okay, so we diagnose autism and ADHD, and the autism we do for children, young people and adults, and ADHD, in our team, we only diagnose children. It's because we have a psychiatrist who's paediatric and not adult, and you know, we'll come into the medication idea, but basically there's lots of different signs, and it can look like struggling to follow instructions, it can look like sort of being quite tangential or interrupting, it can look like struggling to focus in class, being really able to focus on things that are motivating and interesting, being really creative and kind of coming up with really fantastic ideas, but struggling when sometimes it's not something that kind of ignites their interest.
Well, speaking of that, what sort of age would you kind of, if a parent called up and said, you know what, I feel that my son or my daughter may have ADHD, what age would you start your assessment stage?
So there's a sort of idea within the clinical world that you shouldn't assess before the age of 7, because of the way that the brain develops and the way that we're kind of thinking about ADHD and some of those behaviours which you might see in younger children might develop the skills to manage. So that's the reason for kind of pausing slightly. In our clinic, we do assess earlier than that, and I think there's increasing research to show that when you look back on children's lives, you can see that the markers were there from an earlier age. But we do, I mean, with all of our assessments, we take quite a cautious approach, and we take a holistic approach, so we don't want to kind of diagnose somebody incorrectly. So we're trying to sort of pause and think and gather as much information as possible, and sometimes we might do an assessment. So I'm thinking about a young 6-year-old who we've seen recently. We've done an assessment, we've said certainly there's some traits, we're going to pause, we're going to give you recommendations, and then we're going to review in 9 months, I think it is, when they're in a different year group and there's different demands, and see kind of how they respond.
So you wouldn't actually give the diagnosis even if the traits were very visible? You would still wait that year till they were 7?
It really depends. No, sometimes we do. We have diagnosed younger kids, but it really depends on the context. And a lot of the young kids we see, everybody that we see actually, there's a real overlap between autism and ADHD. I'm sure many people are aware of the ADHD profile, and so more commonly now we're trying to sort of think about people in terms of profile as opposed to just the diagnosis which they receive, because that's much more helpful.
Thank you. So our next question was, what age do you assess from? So we've done that one. So I think medication's quite a controversial subject and conversation. Personally, all for it, but I know that's not for everyone. So the question is, when might a parent consider medication?
Like you say, it's really a personal journey. So we work with lots of families, and the first thing to say is we always advise making environmental changes before considering medication, and thinking holistically about different contexts and different supports you can put in place. And if the family are interested in medication, then, you know, that's something we can support with. But are you asking what age? No, you're not asking.
No, when would you suggest to a parent that you
When?
maybe have tried different avenues
Yeah.
and maybe medications?
So if they've like implemented the environmental changes at home, so putting different supports and strategies like timers, like structures, like different systems. There's so many amazing apps now you can use to support everyday activities. If those things aren't impacting enough, and the family and the school and everybody really want to try something different, then we'd say, okay, that's what they're ready to do. And then the psychiatrist would support that.
Yeah, I was just going to add on. So in our team, we're therapy-led as opposed to medically-led, which means that Louise and I are in charge, which always sounds a bit strange, but as psychology and speech and language. And so the sort of main bulk of our team are therapists, and our psychiatrist is part of the team which would think about medication. But in terms of kind of when do you think about the role of medication, as you said, it's a really personal choice. We've seen some kids absolutely thrive on it, and I guess that's when you'd be trying to think what you're weighing up the pros and cons always. And I guess if you can see that a child is really struggling in school, that's impacting on their academic, but it's also impacting on their self-esteem. It's having a huge impact on anxiety and mental health. You think maybe this is a point where...
Yeah, I think I was at that point with my son.
Yeah.
That's what we kind of did, because academically he's very intelligent, but he just couldn't focus, concentrate. Yeah. And going through exams, I thought, as a parent, I wouldn't be doing him, what's the word, like, exactly, if I didn't try. And actually, it hasn't changed his personality. It hasn't, summoned him, but it's helped him.
Yeah.
It really has. So in my case, 100%, I'm
but
all for it.
They don't always work, medication, I hear.
It doesn't.
It's not for
always
everybody.
work. And it's like every medication which we take, caffeine impacts people differently, so medication will have a different impact.
I can't even take paracetamol with caffeine in. I'm buzzing all night. Pathetic.
I can have it at 10 o'clock at night and it makes no difference.
Same as Josh, he can have 4 coffees and go to sleep. I can't even have a Diet Coke.
So we all have different brains and we all have different bodies, and so it makes sense that different children would respond differently to medication. So we know that that's the case, and any medication is done very slowly, carefully, with kind of consideration of other things going on in the family life.
We have one more question and then we have to move on. The question is, what are the overlaps with autism and ADHD?
Okay, so just thinking about neurodiversity in general, so autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, generally the overlaps are sort of around executive functioning, so the way we can plan, prioritise, organise, and those sort of functions that we need in everyday activities. So getting started with activities, being able to finish things, sort of those everyday things is what we see across both autism and ADHD.
Yeah, and the other part of it is the sensory sensitivities, although this is slightly more controversial, I guess, than the executive functioning, but because sensory sensitivity is much more common in an autistic profile. However, clinically, people with ADHD are also reporting a lot of kind of sensory sensitivity, and some of that is to do with the way that information is processed. So in an assessment, we're sort of trying to tease out what might be the cause of somebody really kind of struggling in a noisy environment. Is it because it just feels too overwhelming and they've got very sort of sensitive hearing, or is it that they're distracted by so many different things and that feels quite stressful for them? So we're trying to sort of tease that apart.
Yeah, and the other common thing is masking, which is where, I'm sure lots of you know, which is where people present differently in different environments. So they might be very sort of hyperactive and busy and all over the place in certain situations than at school, for example, where they know how they're supposed to behave and they're frightened of getting into trouble, then they're holding it all in. So whether it's ADHD or autism, it can look really different. So then that can be really tricky for families where they go to school and then the teacher's like, no, we've got no concerns. Mm-hmm. And then they go to CAMS or they come to us and the teachers just write, we have no concerns.
Yeah.
And then the parents sort of either get rejected or they kind of feel that they're making it up almost. And so that's also another overlap with both autism and ADHD. And so, yeah, we have to that's why Rebecca, when she was explaining, sometimes we don't give the diagnosis, is because we need to look across environments. Sometimes we might need to do a school observation, because some things are more subtle, and when you've got a class of 30, you might not notice them, whereas we're really zooming in on someone and sort of scrutinising what they're doing, and it might be sort of going under the radar in that environment.
Yeah,
I get that.
imagine. Well, thank you so much to Rebecca and Louise.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Up next, it's our girl. It's our girl,
Come
Jessie.
on, Jessie.
Everyone, take a seat, Jessie. Most of you may have seen Jessie on our podcast. Jessie is the queen of PDA. And I think at the moment, PDA, known as pathological demand avoidance,
Yep.
is very trendy.
It's
So-
trendy.
Yeah. So what is PDA basically?
So PDA is pathological demand avoidance, like Soph said, and it basically, to the outsider looking in, is just that your kid just generally doesn't give a shit, and that they are not defiant, they won't follow any rules or instructions, but actually it's a nervous system disability, so they suffer from loss of autonomy. So every request of a child with PDA, they see it as a threat. So they basically can just lose their minds, but it really is all about managing
Or we
it.
lose our minds as parents.
Yeah, but we can control ourselves. We
Yeah.
can, we can take a deep breath, but they generally go from, they can be very calm and able, and then, get your shoes on, get your bag together, go out, sit here, let me have a TV control.
Yeah. Give us an example of how PDA for Maxi happens.
I think for Max, so initially at first, it's kind of got put on our radar when he was sort of in the later end of being at nursery. And there was a few incidents he was pulling off like the nursery assistant's glasses, like didn't like them. And we just thought, he's
Just
a
a
twin,
cheeky
he's getting
chappy.
a bit upset, he's with his twin brother all the time, like he's annoying him. And they're born in October, so they were starting school as the eldest. My husband and I just generally assumed that, the general consensus was they're ready for school and they're bored at nursery.
Yeah.
And then it really sort of, like the wheels came off when they started school. He just lost his mind, really. That was about it. Flipping tables, pushing fridges over, and that the defiant behaviour just got so much worse in a matter of 6 to 8 weeks. It went from a little bit disruptive to, come on, Maxie, let's do this. And to everybody else, you kind of sound really soft and fluffy. And I think it's what your husband said. For ages, I kind of was a bit concerned when I was out and about, you'd give people the middle finger, and you'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then I was thinking, this isn't normal. Boys are boys. We've obviously got an elder son, and I couldn't remember him being that disruptive. And then PDA was mentioned to us, but Max's behaviour can be, I think, as the ladies just said, the environmental change has a massive shift in their overall sort of day-to-day life. But when they're in a busy environment, PDA is high levels of anxiety. What you and I see as normal, he just can't articulate his feelings. So the easiest thing for him to do is to scream or shout or hit or kick or give the middle finger, or we've had a bit of a term of spitting, but they just need to be in control, and they just see sort of everyday requests as a threat.
So we put the podcast on both Instagram and TikTok, and everyone's really, really nice on TikTok. I don't know if anyone's got an account. People comment really nice things on there. That's completely sarcastic. Jessie mentioned that Maxie had to go to
Just give you a little cuddle.
lovely, a
Pupil referral unit.
unit.
So a PRU.
We got slated.
Yeah, historically, for me, now I'm 45, and a PRU is a pupil referral unit, but generally the naughty kids went there, the naughty children went there. I remember distinctively a couple of lads from my year went to a PRU, and they were sort of, because actually now, if you think about it, 25, 30 years ago, they weren't disruptive and naughty. They had additional needs that had never been diagnosed, because PDA still to this day is not actually a clinical diagnosis. you're constantly battling, and there are some countries where they very dismissive of it, full stop. They won't even accept that it is a medical condition, that it's a nervous system disability. And even still in the UK, dependent on where you live, the geographical effect of your medical trust has a massive impact on whether or not you will get a diagnosis. Is it an ASD? Is it with a profile of PDA? Can it be, or is it a primary diagnosis, or is it just bad behaviour and it's parenting and you need to manage it? Which is really, really upsetting and stressful.
It's so tough for the parents.
Yeah, I mean, when they get going, it's explosive. They are out of control. They see red very quickly. Unless you swoop in to make an environmental change or use the correct language or basically evacuate where you are and everybody from it, they need to come down very quickly. But sometimes if you can't get them down,
how long does
back
it
into
take?
that calm and able, I mean, 90 minutes. I think we've seen a massive difference in Maxie since he started his specialist school in October. And they work with us and they do sort of trauma-based teaching, which has been good because he's never had a traumatic childhood, but he had a traumatic experience at school. He started, what would have been 3 years ago in September, and, we had 2 years of utter chaos and hell and, fighting through our local authority, which we're all very aware of. And we say about 90 minutes, I think, really, for Maxie, is when he can come fully back down. But sometimes, occasionally, it can repeat and it can continue and it can go on for hours. But we've got much better. I think as the years have gone on, I can spot the triggers. They are, you can see.
Is
them
it always
coming.
with the trigger though, or can it just be out of the blue?
No, not at all.
Because I don't even know if this is PDA, but Callie loves chicken. And last night I made a chicken stir fry. She went ballistic.
Why? Because
don't know.
They can just.
But she eats
switch.
chicken every day. But is that a PD? Like she didn't. She refused the meal.
I think the problem with PDA, or the challenge that we find, it's very multi-complex. There's a lot of spinning cogs with it. Sleep's a massive issue also.
Because I remember you saying that if the glass of water was sitting there, he physically cannot get that water.
No, and he will, and that's what drives my husband mad.
But
He's like, why
it's
can't
real.
he get it himself? Like, why are you bending over backwards? And the thing is that you've always got to remember with children that have got PDA, it's can't, not won't. And it is an absolute mindset shift that you, as a parent, need to take more so than actually the child's behaviour, because obviously behaviour breeds behaviour, and if you say to him, get the drink yourself, you're quite likely for the scale to creep up quicker and quicker, and then you're ultimately going to get to explosive, which you don't want to get to, because when they have these explosive meltdowns, the exhaustion, it's high levels of anxiety. They are panic attacks, effectively, because it's a nervous system disability. We have seen quite a big change in Maxie for the positive, because we're getting better. My husband still freaks out though when he feels embarrassed, I think, and Maxie doesn't really like wearing a sunflower lanyard. He says he looks different, and he doesn't want to, and also he can get his twin brother in the neck with it. So we've had a few near strangulation issues when they've been fighting. It's like, no, you can't do that, because again, they're very unaware of their own strength also. Max is a big kid. He is considerably bigger than his older twin brother. So just that balancing act all the time. But I know that Darren, he couldn't make it tonight, but he feels incredibly embarrassed sometimes, because there is that consensus, he doesn't look autistic. Yeah. And that's a mindset shift that my husband's had to really sort of struggle with, because he, generationally, he was brought up, if you are told to do something, you sit at the table, you have your dinner, that's just how family life was. But that's not our family, and that's not how we can parent our children, because it just...
I do understand, though, what he says, how
totally.
he gets like that, because sometimes, when people come up and they'll try and interact with Bailey, or they'll try and talk to her, and I'm kind of like, well, she's not going to talk back to you. And I kind of sometimes want to just write, I am autistic on her head.
Yeah, totally.
To stop because she's not being rude.
No, and I think that's why
I do get embarrassed.
And Darren really wants Maxie to wear a sunflower lanyard, because I think when it escalates and it can get quite explosive when they're out, he feels embarrassed that he has to.
Is Maxie aware?
Yeah, Maxie's aware. We've always been very transparent with Max. He's known very early on. When he started school, it was very, very obvious that there was something seriously sort of underlying. And yeah, he's completely aware. You know, he's obviously got ADHD also, so he is very aware that he's different, and he knows that he's got PDA. But it still doesn't stop the times. You know, a little old lady the other day hit him. She was in a mobility scooter, and I could see her just out the corner of my eye in the aisle of the supermarket. And I was thinking, God, she's like speeding up really quickly. I was thinking, oh my God, please don't. And she just tapped Maxie, and he was like, you shouldn't be driving your mobility scooter like that in here. And I was thinking, oh my God. And she was like, well, you're not a very polite boy. And he just went. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm ever so sorry. I'm really sorry. And then I started to go into panic. I was really embarrassed, and this lady was, really.
You find yourself explaining to her.
And then I took a deep breath and I said, you know what? He's got a nervous system disability. You should be driving a bit more carefully in the supermarket with kids in tow. I said, and
we're always going to stick up for our children.
Exactly. And I said to Maxie, right, come on, we're going. And he was all sort of like, yeah, this old lady. But it is a mindset shift more so for the parents, because I think, when they do go off on one. But we had Maxie for a very long time. He didn't leave the house because he was in burnout after the trauma of starting mainstream. So that's made once they get out of burnout, they go the complete opposite. He didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to move off the sofa. But they're so resilient. And I say this to every parent who's got a child with PDA. They're like, how can I build resilience in my child? I was like, well, actually, you don't need to. Like, they spend their entire life in fight, flight, or freeze. So their resilience is incredibly high. It is actually the parents that need to build their resilience, because it is a really difficult disability to deal with. There's not many resources. It's not a clinical diagnosis. There's not much help and support out there. And people are just sort of left to their own accord. And, they just get into these situations where they just don't know what to do, and they're just pulling their hair out.
Yeah. So to end this, would you kindly share maybe 2 or 3 different things to help? Because since our podcast, I've been trying it with both Callie and Marley.
What, declarative language?
Yeah, the right way to do things. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, to say, right, kids, it's bath time. Oof. No.
Oh, no, that's a demand.
That's it. Oof. Well, I'm like, well, you need to go in the bath. So I said, go on, you share.
I think the declarative language, it does take a while. It's every day's a learning day, but there's still some days where I don't use it intentionally. I'm just, you get caught off guard. But instead of saying, right, come on, you need to get upstairs, you need to get in the bath, or you need to get ready for school, it's like, I wonder if you can beat me to get up the stairs. By the time I've counted to 20, I bet you can't do this. Generally, what we've also noticed is if we're trying to bring in something new, and Max is very like, no, I don't want to have a go, and say, well, it's all right, I'll just give it to your older brother. Then he's straight up, because he's just like straight away, oh, what's he got?
Thank you,
Thank
Jessie.
you. Thank you.
Can we please have the lovely Kaylee and Nick up on the stage?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Do you want to explain to the audience why we've asked you to come up?
I'm Kaylee, and this is my husband Nick.
Hello.
And we are parents in Makaton on Instagram. We have a 6-year-old who is pre-verbal, so he's non-verbal from like the age, up until about 5. And we say pre-verbal because now he has some speech sounds, vocalizations, and about 4 words, and he communicates with intent, so that's why we say pre-verbal. Yeah. And I got Nick to join in on the Makaton and said it'd be really lovely to get you on the Instagram account with me to just show that it's not always down to the mum, because I do feel like that. I feel that pressure sometimes.
So Makaton is a form of sign language.
Well, why don't I was going to say, put your hand up if you know what Makaton is.
Katie doesn't.
So I would say less than 50%. I also didn't know it before our girls started speech and language therapy. So please explain to everyone what Makaton is.
So it's a communication tool that uses speech, signs and symbols. You don't have to use all 3, but you always have to use your speech. So you can use speech and sign, which is primarily what we use, or you can use speech and symbols.
What was your reason behind using Makaton?
Yeah, so really just to give our son Rui an opportunity to sort of explain, communicate, show us what he wants to do, especially basic sort of needs. So we learned some basic, we did sort of a level 1 Makaton course. It was the speech and language therapist that advised us to look into it. So we looked into it, we did the course with Kay's parents as well. And we found that after a certain amount of time, it really helped Rui and us.
You had to be quite persistent, didn't you, for a while with it to start with? And he had to have a certain degree of communication to be able to do that to start with, or not?
No, so we started when he was about 2.5. And to be honest, I nearly gave up a few times because he wasn't looking at our hands. It was quite hard to keep him engaged. He has global developmental delay. We were diagnosed at 1. Later, diagnosed with autism at age 4. So his attention span just wasn't great for us. So lots of times we were like, it's not working. Originally, when we first started, I was like, we have to learn the whole language. Even though it's not a language, it's different to British Sign Language, I have to say. Because British Sign Language is its own language in its own right and has a different grammatical structure. We use Makaton in spoken word order. And yeah, so we got a bit overwhelmed. Yeah. This isn't working. But, you know, looking at the research, it does help some children. And I was like, why shouldn't it be Rui? Yeah. So I was like, right, let's just learn 5 that we think are really helpful for Rui. And we'll
Can
stick.
you tell us the 5 that you chose?
Yes. Shall I sign and you speak?
Yeah. Go on.
No pressure, Nick.
More, yeah, that's right. Milk. Food or eat.
Or to eat,
Yeah.
nice. That's obvious.
Beer. No, drink. Yeah.
And then
Help. Yeah.
to help you or help me. Rui still doesn't do help now, even though we've been doing that so long. So it took about a year for him to sign the first one back to us.
That must have felt amazing.
But the
Yeah.
patience that you stuck by that for an entire year to
I
then
was-
get the success.
We had better days, like, you try and be consistent as possible, but as I said, I think on the podcast, you do drop the ball, and you're like, I just didn't use any signs today, and beat yourself up about it. But you just try and be
Well, you have to
consistent as
constantly
possible.
I have to constantly remind myself of the signs because you do forget them when you don't use them. But yeah, it's certainly made a massive difference for us.
So you mentioned, Nick, on the podcast will be out in a couple of weeks, so we obviously know more, that you've got 2 nephews that are both also autistic.
Yep.
One non-verbal
Yep.
that uses an AAC. And if
Yep.
anyone doesn't know what that is, it's like an iPad as such. It's a screen that they communicate through pressing buttons.
Yep.
And then your other nephew is verbal. So what's interesting, and just a question, is would you recommend Makaton to parents of children that are non-verbal or pre-verbal? Because I know it's working for you, but would you recommend, say, it's the way forward?
I mean, I would recommend giving it a try if you feel like your child is kind of trying to tell you stuff, or there's stuff you could learn that they can't tell you, and you want to try something else. Obviously, the AAC is helpful as well. But yeah, for us, it obviously helped massively. Some people it doesn't work for, but I would recommend giving it a try, definitely.
So, Kaylee, you mentioned that you are going to show us some examples.
Yes.
Yes?
Well, I was going to do a little practical first.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Something we did on as soon as we started our level 1 course, and it just helped us put us in the shoes of Rui. So I'll ask you to, if you
Okay.
like. So I want you to think of a sentence that's something about yourself, whether it's something to do with a holiday you've been on, something you ate for dinner last week, you know, just something, a statement about yourself. So have a quick think.
Pressure.
Don't say it out loud.
Oh, okay.
Oh, don't say it out loud.
Could be anything.
Okay.
Could be something about family, a restaurant you like.
Okay.
Right, so now I'm going to ask you to tell the audience. Sophie, you can go first. Sorry,
No, Jay, go
but no, no.
first. Okay, I'll go first.
But you can't use your words, so you got no words.
Oh, crap. How the hell would I... Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Telepathic?
Okay. I could do it. I could do half of it.
Yeah. Can't use your words.
That's brilliant. The lips.
That's a very good.
That was
very
it.
Good go.
I love sushi.
Yeah. So they just asked us on that course, because we were in a room full of strangers, well, on Zoom. How did it make us feel when we had to tell these strangers something about ourselves and we couldn't? And to be honest, we felt a bit embarrassed.
Yeah. You feel like frustrated because you can't say what you want to say.
And just not understanding what you're
and
trying
I
to
was
say.
quite withdrawn. I was just like, this is really hard work. So I cling on to that and think, right, that's why we're going to persevere with the Makaton to start
'Cause
with.
that's how our son might feel, so
Yeah.
to give him that option.
Yeah, so those 5 signs that we've just done were the first 5. And then, when Rui was 3, he signed milk at the fridge to me. So I was like, oh my God, you want some milk? And then he soon learned more, but Rui still does this for more, which is paper. But it still does this. But all his school know it, don't they? They're like, that means more.
His school have been amazing as well. Like at the Christmas show, all the kids will learn Makaton, so they'll sing the song.
gorgeous.
Makaton, so
And Rui's at a mainstream school.
yeah.
It's mainstream with a one-to-one. He
With
has
a
an
one-to-one.
EHCP with the one-to-one on there. And I did push for the wording to be that all his key workers must use Makaton. I think originally it was like visual aids such as Makaton, and I was like, what does such as mean? Does that mean they don't really have to use it? I was like, no, that it needs to be included because that
That's
is his only form of
fantastic.
communication right now.
So when he signs, he doesn't say the words though? Or does he make the noise or the sound?
Yeah, to start with, so for like 2 years, no sound, just
Yeah.
the signs. He's starting to use vocalisations now. 'Cause that's what I
But
say
not
with-
together necessarily.
No,
Like-
no. As in, when he signs, he'll sometimes use the sounds,
Yes.
but he does use a lot of sounds now just without the Makaton. So he's like dropping the Makaton.
Yeah.
But that is the natural progression.
Yeah.
You use the signs, then the speech or the vocalisations come with the signs, and then eventually you drop the signs. And I do think, like research says, that it does stimulate vocalisations and sounds.
Obviously, you can't predict the future, but I'm sure as parents, as we all do, you think about it. Where do you see his communication going? Not the hope. Where do you just see? Just where do you feel it?
This time last year, he said his first word, me. So up until that point, not a lot had happened with the speech. So I was really prepared for, he's just not going to talk. And we'll use Makaton and his AAC device. Now I have a bit more hope. He wants to, and we had parents' evening this week, and this teacher said he stands up in the class, he always says me if he wants to get up and demonstrate something, and if there's reading a sentence, he's got the vowel sounds, so he's like E-end for the end, and he wants to speak in front of his friends.
Yeah, that's the big difference. He genuinely, you can tell he wants to do it, so it's been a massive step.
Yeah, it did take a while for his attention. And like at weekends, I would say, right, today I'm going to teach him fast and slow. And I'd play games with his cars, fast and slow, or put him in the buggy and push him really fast and sign fast. And then I'd push him really slow and say, this is slow, and show him slow. And then I'd try and ask him. And I'd say when he got to about 4, he started like watching our hands, and I could show him the choice, and then he would try and copy the choice.
But that's such progression in itself, and
I
it's
need you
always
to come
something
home
that
with me.
It's always something that you say though, because you see such small progression in Bailey. But as you were saying, Rui, when he was 2, 3, wouldn't even look at your hands.
No.
Now he looks at your hands.
Yeah.
So even though it may seem small, it's such a progression because he's going to the next step of his communication.
Yeah.
So you have to think.
I think he'll eventually speak. It might not be as we're speaking today, but I think he'll drop the Makaton.
I do, yeah. I'm
As
a
he
lot
gets
more
older,
confident
if
now
I'm
in the
honest.
last 6 months, maybe.
That's
Even it's just
fantastic.
come on so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I did bring some. Thank you. Sorry, I just really wanted to show, because you said on the podcast it'd be really helpful.
Yes. Yep.
With transitions, because with bath time, we used to say bath and he would have a meltdown. I'd give him timers.
Oh, yes.
So we have a
someone said
3,
that
a
before,
5,
yeah.
and a 1-minute timer, different colours. And I'd say, Rui, 3 minutes, and then it's bath time. And he'd watch that timer.
I think that would be good for PDA as well. No? She's like, no.
So when he saw that timer, he was like that. Or using widgets, and the nursery gave me the widgets. So this was before we started Makaton, because it was universal for them. I made a little timetable. See, it's rubbish cardboard, but in the mornings we would say, "Oh, breakfast." He'd eat his breakfast, and I'd say, "Finished," and he can pull them off himself, and he quite likes that, just so he knows that he's got it done. We haven't used these for a while, but it definitely helped in the
It's good
early
for
stages.
interaction as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and an emotion one.
Yeah,
So he can tell us kind of, once he had the understanding of what emotions are,
Yeah.
they use this at school as well. So he could say, like, I'm sad.
I've got another question to put your hands up. Do visuals work for your children?
I think just a neurodiverse brain can sometimes be supported
They
with a
need
visual
visual.
cue. It's a word is transient, it goes. That visual cue just lasts longer. Even a sign, I can hold that position. I'm sad. I can still hold it, and you know how I feel.
Once
If I
you've
I'm
said it,
sad,
you've said it.
It's gone.
Yeah. No,
I'm
I agree
like,
with that.
get on my phone, go on Google, and then show it quickly, and then she's like, okay. The pressure, the stress, honestly. If you say ice cream, and she's like, where? So I have to show her where we're going for ice cream, and then it makes her feel better. So, good old Google. Well, anyway, we want to say thank you so much to
Thank
Kaylee
you.
and Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so lastly,
Last
last but
not-
no means least, can we have the Send Mummies, please?
Welcome the Send Mummies, Lisa and Gemma. Well, everyone knows who Lisa and Gemma are because we probably speak about them on every single podcast that we do.
They're my life saviours.
They help us personally and they help so many amazing people. So why don't you girls just give yourself give a little bit of an introduction?
A personal introduction?
Yes, please.
Go for it, Jen.
I'm Gemma. As everyone knows by now, I have 5 boys. My eldest is 17, then 14, 13, 6 and 5. My eldest has a diagnosis of autism. He also has hypermobility and pica and dyspraxia. My 14-year-old is now on the pathway for an ADHD diagnosis. My 13-year-old holds no diagnosis, although I'm so sure he's autistic, but he himself does not want to be assessed. That is his choice. My 6-year-old, who most of you will probably know from our videos, Hugo, is autistic with global developmental delay, hypermobility, he is nonverbal. And then my youngest, Miles, is 5. He also has autism and global developmental delay. God, I feel like I've got so much talking to do.
And yet, she still carried on, so hats off to
And look
you.
how beautiful she looks.
Yeah, autism, global developmental delay. He is also hyperlexic, which means that he can read and write, and he could read before he could speak. He has developed language which came from echolalia, and he is a Gestalt language processor. And I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Gemma.
I'm Lisa. I'm not as exciting as Gemma. I have got 2 boys. My eldest is 13 next week. He is a bilateral hearing aid user, autistic, and has generalised anxiety disorder. And then I have a 5-year-old who is autistic, global developmental delay, hypermobile, and he has some medical conditions that are really kind of rare that you wouldn't probably know even if I told you.
Easy. And then what they do all day long is... How did you get to where you are today?
So me and Lisa met on the playground of a specialist nursery where our 3 youngest children went. We didn't speak to each other for a year.
No. Well, nobody spoke to anyone.
Not because we didn't like each other. Yeah, we just
nobody spoke to anyone.
Everyone's life was just so... none of us had slept. Everyone's going through their own struggles, and we just kind of stood there and
Threw your
stared at
kid
the
in and
floor.
ran out.
Well, no, just stood there. Just like,
Literally, the kids were dropped in, and no one said anything. You went back to your car, and that was it.
yeah. But yeah, well, we got talking actually about our eldest children because Lisa was going through the EHCP process with her eldest. I'd already gone through that. Other parents heard what we were talking about, and they were right at the beginning of their journey. They didn't know what was coming, so we started helping these parents on the playground. And we were having a massive impact. We started helping people through tribunals, trying to get school places. And then we decided to set up the PTA, but it wasn't your standard PTA, it was just more of a support network. So we used to run coffee mornings and these drop-in sessions, getting everyone to bring in their paperwork, helping them with DLA, blue badges, applying for EHCPs, going through tribunals, the whole shebang. Then we started doing workshops, and then we thought, do you know what, let's
And this
take
was all for free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had nothing, not
better
nothing else to
to
do,
do.
we had loads to do, but it filled our time while the kids
No, but if anyone knows how long a DLA form is
Yeah.
to fill out,
Yeah.
it's 40 pages of hell. And all you do is just repeat the
Same
same
question.
thing. So
Yeah.
you're helping all these people.
And we still do about 4 of them a day.
Yeah.
Hats off.
It's become a special interest.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Maybe to you, babes.
Definitely to I sit and read case law for fun.
No judgment.
But it does some good. So then we decided to take it onto social media. So we started with TikTok. We had a couple of videos that went really wild. Then we set up Instagram. And again, still doing everything for absolutely free. Me and Lisa used to sit up until early hours of the morning trying to answer everyone. We just wanted to help everyone, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it got so much that we didn't have enough time for our children, for our families. We weren't sleeping, even less than we weren't sleeping before. So we were like, we need to put a boundary in place. So we thought we'll set it up as a business and help the ones that help the ones that we can with set boundaries on time. And yeah, so we set up Send Mommies as a business.
And you have currently helped me with my DLA.
Yes,
You've
we
helped
did.
me get my blue badge.
We did.
And which
Your
was a
third
struggle,
time
my third
lucky.
time. And we have just sent off Bailey's EHCP.
We have. We
So
have.
we'll wait and see.
And then
I'm
I
up for a
said
fight.
after the event, you're helping with both my children. Because you told me that Marley can also get it from having celiac
I
disease.
did. That was our conversation
Yeah.
the other day.
So,
Yeah.
hell yeah. Thank you, girls.